the show. Today we'll be doing our UEL and UCL review. So, yes, Jitu, please go first.
Okay, yeah. So basically, I think these two games pretty much bring an end to a typical European football season, and the UEL final coming in first, 26th, and the UCL final coming in 29th. So both were pretty interesting games. I'd say there was a team that were overwhelmingly favorites in both the finals, and there was a team that was supposed to be underdogs, like they were the dark horses in the tournament. Like nobody expected. Like other two teams, like you knew they are going to win. They're so dominant in the throughout the season, throughout the competition in which they were playing. So yeah, first I think we'll move on to the UEL final. So Elijah, what is your view? Like, how did you
I
think
think
the
we
final
had
played
actually
out?
predicted this, that if United don't take their upper hand and if they don't keep maintaining it, it will be very tough for them. And Villarreal, no, they seemed comfortable after they got their goal. They seemed comfortable with not attacking, and even after they conceded, they were still comfortable with having played out a draw. So maybe they had actually thought it out, because if you see in their relative squad strength kind of a perspective, on paper United are a way better side, and Villarreal is made up of people who have been rejected from other clubs, or who have been, it's like a downgrade for them from wherever they have been playing, or it's like upcoming players. So Villarreal had basically nothing to lose, but United had to prove a point, because it's been 4 years now that they have gone without a trophy, and they really needed to step up their game. And they did try. I'm not saying that United didn't try, but they didn't try enough. And especially if you think about what happened in the penalties, it was absolutely horrible. In case people who are listening have not seen or even not heard of what happened, there were 21 penalties scored in the penalty shootout. 21 scored out of the 22 taken, and the last one,
Yeah. That is very rare. The chance of that happening is like 0.4%. If 0.4% in every, if you count every single football game that is happening in the world, so that's very rare. And the best part is nobody even practiced. Nobody expected, because the VRL manager Unai Emery told they haven't practiced penalties at all. It was just pure natural instinctively. I don't
the
know.
problem was
Yeah,
not
you carry
only with both the keepers letting go of all the penalties except the last one, of course, but Bruno Fernandes apparently won the toss. And generally what you do in a penalty shootout is you try and take the first kick, because then you know what you have to do the next time. If the opposition is taking the kick first, you're already at the back foot, because generally you need to have a perspective, especially in these crunch situations. And Bruno Fernandes, after winning the toss, I don't know what he thought of. Maybe he's like, okay, we are the better team on paper, so let's just give them a go. And I don't know what he was thinking, but then he let it go, and I think that was a big mistake, because we obviously know what happened. And the other thing was, you have Dean Henderson sitting on the bench, and I'm not saying Henderson is a way better keeper than DA or whatever, but DA, I think he has conceded his last 40 penalties in a row, or some weird and crazy stat like that. The last time apparently he saved a penalty was in 2016, so that's 5 years without saving a penalty at all. 5 full years without saving a single penalty. And the last one he saved was against some Lukaku or something, when he was playing for some other team, Everton or something. So Ole should have maybe thought of substituting the keeper then, but then that would also have had massive implications, because in a crunch game, when you're supposed to trust your technically number one keeper, if you took him off, it doesn't bode well for the future of DA. So maybe all of that was running in his mind. It's easy for us to say you should have just put Dean Henderson in, he would have taken it, but we also have to think about all the team dynamics and all the dressing room talk and all the stuff that goes behind the scenes. So for us, it's easy to say that DAR should not have been the person who was stepping up to save the penalties, but we all know that that's not how usually the team works. So there are many things that went wrong, but even if you go the penalties is a whole different thing. The game also, United they were trying, but I felt like they didn't, like, what should I say? It was they were slightly, what should I say, laying back. They were too backlayed or whatever. I don't know the word for that. I completely forgot the word for that. It seemed like they were too, what should I say, casual, a little bit too casual. And especially when you are going for your first trophy in so many years, that should not happen.
Passive.
And considering United had qualified for the Champions League, they crashed out of the Champions League and they were playing in the Europa League, which is technically speaking one tier down. If you're playing one tier down, you're supposed to absolutely decimate the opposition. Even when Jose Mourinho had said that it's not right for teams coming from the Champions League to play in the Europa League, because it's like you're giving them a second opportunity for what? So they should have one, and I just don't know. It looked like a poor show, and they need to be rethinking their strategy for recruitment and whatever else. So yeah.
So what I think the game, see, I've told in this thing pre-match thing, like they have to score first, because VRI will slow the game down, and they stuck to their plan. They pakkas played their plan and they laid back. They waited for United. Even as you said earlier, even after they scored, they stuck to their plan. See, this is something that United have been suffering throughout the season, I'd say. Whenever they face a team that can sit back and they have enough quality, they don't know what to do. Like, they struggle to, like, VRL just did that. They sat back, they soaked in all the pressure coming in, and they defended well. And at one point, United players, it got into their head, they started getting frustrated and mistakes happened, all this. And VRL did that. Then their aim, even though they consider, was to take it to extra time. So going into extra time, you look at there, all the United players are tired as hell. See, that's one more thing I don't understand. They haven't made a substitution. I think the first substitution they made is in the 100th minute, and that is very, very, very long, and players are already tired. So but VRL kept changing their rotating players, but towards the extra time period, they were the better side playing in. And they started creating more chances, and they were in more confidence going into the penalty shootout as well. So that happens, like, sort of psychological effects that had impacted the shootout. And yeah, as you were saying, the whole Dean Henderson, Dean Henderson, I think he took, he has some 40 or 30% save success rate, despite taking less than half the numbers of penalties De Gea has taken. So that is a pretty significant advantage there, and I think that's up to the coach whether to decide, because he specifically substituted many of his players to put in penalty specialists. You look at Alex Telles, he's a penalty specialist. Most of them outfield players he put in, they were penalty specialists. So maybe should he have substituted the goalkeeper? Maybe not, because he was doing that with outfield players. I mean, the goalkeeper is a guy who has to face all these shots. All the outfield players, they just take one shot. He has to face all these shots, he has to take the shots, all these things are there. So yeah, maybe that is, I think, where experience comes. Unai Emery is a very, very experienced manager, especially when you look at the Europa League competition, and he knows how to deal with each match and every player, and he's done it. He managed a team that is, I think, 7th in the La Liga, and he managed to take them to the final, and he managed to win it. One day, within a span of 4 or 5 days, they managed to go from the UECL to the UCL. That's enormous. So all credit to him and VRL for sticking into their plan. And for United, this is a stepping stone. They still have another season. This is improvement. They have improved drastically from last season. And yeah, next time I think they should tackle these issues whenever they're playing the low block teams that sit back. They should tackle the issue. They have to create chances. They're creative. It's not about counter-attacking every time. When you're facing a team that has a lower individual quality and they don't play position football, you have to find a way, because not all the time you get the chance to counter-attack. So that's something they need to address, and it's looking good for them. And new players are coming, and I hope they make some good signings for that to bring in that extra creativity that they need. And yeah, that's all I guess. So overall, I think the game was. I think we should have expected it. I think it's kind of, what do you say? You see, one team was like, even though United were having total ball domination, they were not creating clear-cut chances. And one more thing I missed: Rashford's chance. He could have won the game for him. That was a open net chance, and I don't know how he missed it. And yeah, that could have decided the game. And yeah, it's these small things that define what you call a game. Big
like
game
you had
this.
pointed out,
I think that's all I
especially
have to
with,
say.
with the individual quality that United has, and people like Rashford, I'm not saying anyone is a bad player here. We understand that in big match situations, yes, the pressure gets to you and stuff like that. But like Jittu had said, these are the chances you should be killing off if you want to keep winning trophies. And it's been a long time since you won trophies. And this is a squad that genuinely has the quality to win trophies, no matter what trophy it is. But the problem is with their consistency, and I think there were quite a few managerial errors. Like you had said, the substitutions. That was way too late, and even we know who play 30-minute games that like you get tired very fast, especially such a high intensity game. And Villarreal are sitting back, so all the onus is on you. Basically, you are running the game. You're just going back and forth with yourselves. So yes, you will get jaded. You will feel a bit tired. And the substitutions should have come at least a good half an hour earlier than they were. The first substitution was, I think, in the 99th or the 100th minute. And obviously we don't know who he should have bought in and all that stuff, because this was his best 11 so far. But then you needed to keep changing, keep refreshing your players. You saw what Unai Emery did, and it was a brilliant move. He kept changing players throughout. And I think one of the other problems is of maybe players feeling, again it all comes back to that players might feel like, oh, in such a big match he couldn't trust me to play the whole game. So there is that also, but we'll never know. So I think that's the end.
Yeah, that's the end, and congratulations to Villarreal. This is their first ever major trophy. They haven't won any trophy till now, and unless you count the UEFA Intertoto Cup, and I don't know what it is. So I just recently brushed it up. So yeah, congratulations to them. Congratulations to Unai Emery, proving his doubters wrong. And Arsenal, you missed this, okay? On
No, we'll just talk about the present UCL spots now, especially from Spain. Now that Villarreal have won, they'll be going on to the Champions League at the expense of Monaco, who now have to play the playoffs to reach the group stage or something like that.
Yeah.
So they have to play additional games to qualify for the Champions League, even though they finished in the Champions League spots. So.
Yeah, and one more equation is that Spain lost their UECL place because already Villarreal were the team sitting there and they already qualify for the UCL. So according to, I don't know how that works technically, but according to the regulations in UEFA, only I think 7 teams can play. So it could have been 8 teams if Celta Vigo, the team they finished in 7th and Villarreal were 8th and they won the Europa League. So that could mean 8 teams playing in Europe for Spain. So now it's as of now 7. I think almost every other league also it's 7, except for the fact maybe all other leagues, their 7th place team is playing in the Conference League. So yeah.
But yes, we can move on to the UCL.
So moving on to the big game. Yeah, the big game, the biggest game in probably any sports club competition. So the Champions League final. Like this is the game like we all wait for every year. Everybody wants to watch this game, and we got a pretty good matchup. 2 good teams, I guess, and still, yeah, it was the same story. I think I have only one word. I think again, Pep overthinked it, and I don't know what is wrong with him right now. It's becoming series right now. I think it is the final of the Champions League, and he's tweaking with the defense. I think they should have played a holding midfielder, especially because I think to provide some extra defensive stability. Because Chelsea are fast on the counter, they have very good runners, and I think having an extra person in the back would have helped him. And he eventually found out that is a problem, but it was too late, because you can see that in the substitution of Fernandinho. I think 63rd minute or something. By that time, it was actually too late. And it was working also. You look at the game, after Fernandinho came in, Chelsea were not that effective going up front. They couldn't create much in going front. But the same has to do with maybe City, who couldn't get it through also. And all the rest of, I think, I'm not saying that's the only thing that had happened. A lot of issues happened. The whole Rudiger, De Bruyne collision. And that maybe affected the creativity towards going to the end of the game, and that pinch of extra, like De Bruyne brings you that extra, what he says, when you're out or something, he can provide that, and that was lacking also. So, and yeah, I think it's a start. It's a start, and they finally made it to the final, and they can build up on it. Now they know how it's like to play in the final. This set of players, I think they're not too old also. I think they know how to play the final, and moving on to the coming years, they can build upon this. They can certainly make it to the final, and yeah, just not overthink this.
Yeah, so I'll talk about it in two parts.
Over
I'll talk about what went right for Chelsea and what went wrong for City. So what went right for Chelsea? First of all, hats off N'Golo Kante. He is the team. There is no Chelsea without N'Golo Kante. He is hands down the best player in the whole squad. I don't care how fast Pulisic runs. I don't care how much creativity Havertz provides. I don't care how much Timo Werner or Giroud scores. But there is absolutely zero chance that Chelsea can achieve anything without N'Golo Kante. You have seen him. His work rate is absolutely mind-blowing.
I think everybody, no one is going to argue and say like Kante is the best player in this squad. He is the best player in this squad. You can look at like all the knockout fixtures, you see who's the man of the match, N'Golo Kante. That he's like playing in defensive midfield. Chelsea have scoring goals, they have a good keeper, but this guy, that's how much an impact this guy makes. And we saw it in the final also. He was everywhere. I mean, we all make memes like he's everywhere. He's
in that one sequence of play, he was in his own half making an interception. He tackled and he won the ball. Then he took the ball up and then he won an aerial duel over Ruben Dias, who is 6'1". N'Golo Kante, for people who don't know, is 5'5". That's his height, 5'5". He's like Sachin Tendulkar height. And he won an aerial duel over a defender whose main job is that, who is 6 feet and 1 inch tall.
Ruben Dias, who has been the best defender in the Premier League this season. He has been the best defender, probably the best player in the Premier League this season. Like, probably.
Kante, he's just pure determination and like hard work. He just keeps, even if he wins the ball and someone lets go of it, he doesn't care. He's like, my only concept is I have to get the ball, somehow make a chance for someone to score, or myself I'll score. And he executed it perfectly. My second point is, of course, Thomas Tuchel. Brilliant management, brilliant man management. He stuck to his guns.
He stuck to his plan. Yeah. Whatever he needed, he just know like what needed to be done. Like no change. We'll just play our game. We'll see what happens. And maybe like the experience he had last season helped him a bit also. And I think PSG didn't trust him as much as Chelsea did. He had much more control over the dressing room, and I think that affected the players also. They had
especially Thiago Silva limping off early on into the game didn't help much. I'm like, okay, Christensen is going to come in, and I'm not saying Christensen is bad, but then Thiago Silva is Thiago Silva. So I'm like, okay, now the game became a little bit more interesting. So now I'm like, yeah, the game is a little bit more interesting. Let's see what happened.
Yeah. But I don't know, something. Yeah. but still something I don't know. Suddenly out of nowhere, like Christensen, he's not the best defender in the world. Never say that he is not. But that game he played with something he has never done before. All the interceptions,
Even Rudiger
he's doing like I
pulled
don't know,
off such
something
brilliant
they had in the
saves,
dressing
like-
room. Something Tuchel might have said. Rudiger, what? He's like that's the like we used to troll that guy, and now that guy is like performing insanely well. I think I having a little bit hopes of Germany actually defending properly after seeing this. If he's able to replicate what he's doing in Chelsea there, so yeah, he had a great game,
Yes, sir.
and yeah. You were telling about now.
No, there's
what
one more
to the
point. So,
City part?
Tuchel
or
stuck
do you have
to his
anything?
guns and he executed his plan well. In the first half, Chelsea were attacking well. I'm not saying they were not attacking, but they were also sitting in deep, and it worked for them because even though City were trying to progress the ball, they never really looked like they were going to score or even coming close to scoring. And after they scored the goal, I thought I wanted to see how the second half would be, because in such a crunch match, generally what if I was there, I would do that. You already got the goal. What can you do? Just put 11 people inside the box, make sure no one takes a shot. That will be the most simple scenario. But second half, Chelsea opened up quite a lot, and that was quite surprising to me because first half they were sitting deep. First half they were defending in numbers, but second half they seemed more confident and more open. And obviously Kevin De Bruyne limping off helped them a lot. And the third point, Mason Mount, he was making runs and all that. But that pass to Kai Havertz was simply out of the world. That was brilliant vision and absolutely, what should I say, top-notch execution. That pass was like inch perfect. It went exactly where he wanted it to go. And Kai Havertz's first touch was brilliant. He just skimmed past everyone. And the hats of that goal was actually very good. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say about Chelsea. Brilliant hats off, new champions of Europe.
Yeah. I don't think people may criticize Ederson, but no. People may criticize Ederson like he came off the line too late or too early, like something they would have said. But
Yeah, he
I
had
don't
to
think
do
there's
it.
much
He had
could
to
do
pull it
because it's purely based on luck at that point, and
Because the defenders were so
he
far
had
ahead
to
and
do it.
they could barely
he can't
keep
stay
up
back.
with Havertz.
Even if he stays back, also it's an open net. He can shoot anywhere.
The defenders were like the
that's
high
the
line
problem.
messed up
And he did
very
it
very
well,
badly.
and
Like
yeah.
yes, you have to maintain your high line, but that gap was like open. And all props to Mason Mount for seeing that and putting it. I think it was Mason Mount only who gave the assist, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what was I saying?
Yeah, he only yeah. And yeah, it was nice. I think Chelsea, like moving to the tournament, they were the dark horses, underdogs, because. And you look back into the group stage when Frank Lampard was coaching, and you never expect Thomas Tuchel to come in. You'll never expect this. I don't think even Chelsea fans will have expected this, let alone reaching the semi-final or the final. Because it was a weird situation there. They were inconsistent in the league. And from that, he took them into the top four, into the cup final, into the Champions League final. So, I am saying it again, PSG, you are missing this. Why did you let that guy go? I don't know. And now you're using your manager also. Pochettino is set to leave. I think these are like small things you need to look at. And nowadays, I think it's changing. The mentality of clubs are changing. It's no longer about superstars. It's more focusing on how good the managers. Managers are being valued very high. You look at now how clubs are valuing managers. Juventus is going back to Allegri. Now they understand how much importance it is to have a good manager, not just some star players. Inter, you can look at that. Inter had to rely on a very good manager in Conte to win the title. And you could see Bayern are willing to spend 30 million euros for 33-year-old Julian Nagelsmann. So that's how the clubs are valuing managers very much higher. And it's true actually. You need a good manager.
Exactly. Like,
so that's how
to put that into context, Pep Guardiola is such a big manager, technically a big manager. And it's not like he does anything bad. He's won the Premier League almost every season that he's been there, other than maybe one. So I think, as I was saying, the 3 points that where Manchester City went wrong was obviously Pep overthinking the game. Like Jittu said, you should have started with a defensive midfielder. And why was there Raheem Sterling? That makes absolutely zero sense. That is not UCL final is not the place where you start
Yeah.
encouraging players.
He has played this team I don't know, already 3 times before this. 2 times in the league, I think once in the cup. Okay, that's more than enough experience to know. He played Tuchel team. He knows how to. I think he lost all also, but I don't know. He didn't learn something or something like that. I think he made a joke in the semi-final or some. I don't know, last game or something like, yeah, now I know his secret, how he plays, I'll erase the team. I don't know if it's a joke or not, but it
Exactly,
certainly
like
didn't look like
not starting with the
he
defensive
knew what he
midfielder was the
doing.
first problem.
Yeah.
Second of all, after De Bruyne, like if De Bruyne is on the field, you need a person who can finish. De Bruyne was giving good passes, but there was nobody to finish. And
Yeah.
Kyle Walker, okay, fine, but
When was Aguero
Aguero
brought
75 again.
No, when
75.
was Aguero brought in? Yeah, 75 minutes. What is he going to do? Nothing he's going to do. You can't expect like miracles
And
last minute.
the UCL final is no place to expect
I mean-
miracles. This is, at least not in this day and age, you can't expect miracles in
No.
football. It's
See, hey, even if you're playing against an average team also, UCL final, they'll suddenly become world class. You don't know how. Like, that's how big the stakes are, and people will just die on the pitch so just to win that trophy. So, not in crucial matches, you can experiment in any league game and random game, you can do that.
So these are the two things. First of all, Pep overthinking and making like weird starting lineup, and Raheem Sterling playing and Kevin De Bruyne limping off. These were not good. And I think the final one was, they got their high press completely wrong. Like, especially in a UCL final high stakes game, you should not have tinkered with your lineup, let alone your defense. That is not the place where you experiment. And Mahrez was literally invisible. I literally didn't see him even once during the whole game. Not even once during the whole game. And that is horrible. They expect you to do something when already you're starting without a striker, like a out and out person who can finish. And Pep kind of sorted that problem when Gundogan was playing up in the league. So Gundogan was giving the goals. So that was fine. Okay. So what are you supposed to do now if you don't have a striker? You try and play a person like that, or De Bruyne more advanced. But here what happened? He played Gundogan far more deep. Like, what are you expecting him to do? What is he? Can't he'll run everywhere and do everything. That's not like. I was reading an article, and then yes, obviously I understand that the team is full of superstars and people will not be unhappy with playing or not. But that is not the place where you experiment. Sterling might not be happy that he is not playing. Well, let him not be happy. You have a trophy at stake. You haven't won it in 10 years. This club has not won the European Cup, I don't know in what, 50, 60 years. You are supposed to give it your all, and it was horrid. And generally, like, City on paper looked the better squad anyway. But if you saw them on the pitch, they did not look convincing at all. They were always unsure of themselves. Like, in the first 5 minutes, I'm like, okay, it's the final nerves. They'll slowly get over it. It didn't look like that at all. They were still playing very cautiously. They were still playing like they didn't believe in themselves. And that is not something that you want from a team that is supposed to win trophies. So, those are my 3 points for City.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much it. So, as I said earlier, I think they should build upon this. This is an experience for the players, and this just shows how hard it is to win this trophy, even if you have good investment. You just need that extra bit. You need that mentality, that experience, and now that they reached the final, they know how to reach the final. And this, I think I am repeating the same point again. So they'll be having the same players, I think, at least for the 2-3 seasons ahead, and they'll be playing the same. They can play in the same level for next 2-3 seasons, as well as they have rising talents. You can look at Mason Mount. So they've been there. They know they can do this. Now it's just the final league. You saw Thomas Tuchel, he almost got there last season, now he won it. And so next time, I think, I'm not what Thomas Tuchel, like, as last year, I think Bayern, they had to give a lot of credit to Thiago on how he screened the back as a defensive midfielder, and that pretty much nullified PSG's attack. Very, very huge contribution he made, and maybe Pep should have done that with Fernandinho. And it could have been a nice ending to Aguero's time in City. And yeah, it's not for them. I mean, they can improve next year.
So, completely off topic. So, we're moving on to the off script, I guess, now. I genuinely have to appreciate the ownership of Chelsea because they know, like, okay, this is not working out. We need to move. And despite having a club legend like Frank Lampard managing their side, and that was the first time I think he actually wrote an open letter saying, yes, he was a legend, thank you for all your contribution, but now is the time to move on. And he obviously knows when to pull the plug. Sarri was not working, done. He moved on. Lampard was not working, done. He moved on. He didn't have a player for etc role, done. He moved on. That is exactly what you want from the leadership structure of any club. And like, it deserves so much credit because every time they need it, and the owner is willing to back whichever manager comes in with the signings that he wants, which is very important. I understand that having the money to support your manager helps a lot, but especially with the Tuchel move, you can understand how much the owner, influences a club. Because in clubs like social run clubs like maybe Barca, Bayern or something, you just can't coaches. You actually need to have a meeting, discuss, because you just can't do things like that.
Meeting with the board,
but if you're the sole owner, you can be like, nah, get out, get the new guy in, which works. I'm not saying that because you saw what happened with Bayern, Niko Kovac or whatever his name. Niko Kovac, what is his name? Yeah, so he was not working. They fired him, but I think maybe it was a little too delayed, but then it worked out well for Hansi Flick when he came in. But if you have a good and strong ownership, especially resting within like 1, 2 or maybe maximum of a very few group of people, things can move fast, and that you've seen with Chelsea. Like things are not going good for them. They went back to the youth structure, they revamped it and started promoting talents from the youth, and it paid off brilliantly. They have now Reece James, they have Mason Mount, they have Billy Gilmore. All of these players are now playing also for the national teams. Reece James has been chosen over so many other people, and now I've heard people saying that Reece James always wanted to be like Trent. Trent won the cup 2 years ago, and now Reece James has also won the Champions League this year. So like, trusting your youth is very important, and like maybe football lost that maybe 5-6 years back, but now they're slowly coming back to their roots. Every club that is investing in their own youth or trying to get in younger players is definitely it's paying rich dividends for them, and I think that is what we should be looking forward to, because any club that you're seeing promoting young talent is beneficial for them, because nowadays it's all become like big money moves, especially since that Neymar move. Everybody's price tag is inflated. You want to buy a defender, you have to pay 80-90 million now. 90 million was what Ronaldo was sold for to Real Madrid. So that is how much money is being involved in football now. So investing in the youth is like the thing to do right now, and if nothing else convinces them, at least it's the cool thing to do. So at least for that purpose they should do it. And if the player comes from the youth academy, the crowd will love him anyway, because he's their homegrown talent. The crowd will rally behind him with their lives. So I don't know, they should have done all that. And especially if we now look at Spurs, they have spent money trying to get people from outside and all. I'm not saying they are bad people, but after Pochettino went off, they had some hopes on Mourinho, but as soon as they saw it was not working out, the scramble, like the noise just grew louder that okay, we need to change, because Mourinho was getting nowhere with the team. And I think that spell of his in Tottenham cannot be termed as a success in any manner of the world. Your opinions on this?
Yeah, so I think Chelsea have an owner. I know he's been criticized widely for changing managers suddenly. Chelsea have a whole list of managers. Even if you look back 10 years, I don't even know how many times they changed managers. They brought in old managers, they changed the new manager mid-season. Lot of mid-season signings they had. But one thing that guy has is this mentality to win. Like, he wants to win. He wants to win trophies. He wants to win cups, and he's ready to do anything for that. So that is what separates Roman from maybe the other owners in the Premier League. Except for maybe the City's owner, he also wants to win. But it's smart also, and you look at United or Man United owner, the Liverpool's owner, like they mainly focus on making profit, I guess. Their main ambition, like low cost, they have to make profit. This guy doesn't care. He is willing to spend money, he's willing to back manager, and he just needs results. He needs immediate results. That's what he does, and it's there. If you have an owner who wants to win, then things will eventually work out for you. So that's the main thing. And coming on to youth, I think many clubs, even the top clubs now, because you look at Real and Barca also, they are in a huge depth right now, and for them it's high time they have to develop the youth, and Real have made move to do that as well. So the coaches they are aiming to replace Zidane are actually Raul and Pochettino. So these two guys have been known to raise up the youth. So Pochettino, throughout his career, he has influenced youth a lot, brought up players, young players, and I don't think language will be an issue for him in Spain. So he can adjust Spanish. I think he can manage. And going to Raul, you look 2 years back, he won the youth league with Real Madrid youth team. So he has plenty of experience. He knows the youth players in Real Madrid's academy, and it's time they use that also. Same goes to Barcelona also. They're trying to promote that and bringing in the young players. I don't know how much long Ronald Koeman is going to last there, but yeah. Chelsea already have a very good academy. They have a very good women's team. They're investing heavily in that, and they can select from that also. Even if they can buy, I mean, they have this perfect balance as of now. They're bringing in players from their academy and signing decent enough names. And I know we are criticizing Frank Lampard, but he did make the signings of Kai Havertz and what you can say, maybe to an extent Timo Werner's finishing has been bad, but his running, his passing contribution, those have been good. And obviously I think Rudiger, all these players was there. So when Tuchel walked in, he had these players with him, and players like Pulisic and all, he already knew, he managed them, and he knows the team well. So it was a good team he had to handle with, and he developed it. It was a perfect mixture of old players, young players, and yeah, you look at the average age of Champions League winning squad, it's the peak age. All the average age will be between 26 and 27. I think Chelsea's was almost close to that, 26, 27. Not too many old players, not too many young players. So that's the key. And it's the future for every club right now, moving in. And even I think all the clubs are making it. They understood this. Heavy money moves or not, it will bring all the stardom, the fan following, all it can bring that. But success, it's different. Sometimes it might work, sometimes, but most of the time it's the team. It's not the individual. So it's nice to see teams focusing on that and letting go of the dark past they have. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
And especially Tuchel, clubs are wary of having a manager like that because he's a little eccentric. He seems like, I call him, he's a mad genius. He is a genius, but then
he's angry.
Yeah, he is extremely passionate. He's too into the job. So clubs are extremely cautious of signing people who are like eccentric, little different. But then it looks like Tuchel always has that thing of getting the best out of every player you give him. Frank Lampard had the exact same side as Tuchel, but Frank Lampard could not pull out the same results. And I'm not saying Frank Lampard is a bad manager. Apparently he's moving to Crystal Palace, so we can see more of him there and understand more of his style. But Tuchel has more experience, and I think in general
it was too high step.
Exactly, from Derby County to Chelsea it's astronomical. That's a jump too
really
big for anyone to swallow. But then, like, the problem with signing, we already talked about this in the past, problem with signing your old players and club legends and stuff like that is, it's very difficult for them to get a second chance back at the same club, especially after they have not succeeded. So I think that's what Javi also is very cautious about, because he's not saying anything about his Barca move, because if he messes this up, there's no chance. Especially maybe Chelsea have a chance, have a shot at getting Lampard back at some point in the future, but if Javi messes up at Barca, he's not going back. That's just the nature of the game. No matter how much he's contributed to club and all that. So
No, see, coming out to Harvey, the thing is that he is not satisfied as of now. See, he's in a club, so I don't know how much you guys, everyone, listeners, follow Asian football. So, Al Sadd is a club who pretty much dominates the Qatari league. So he's won all the domestic trophies, but there's a big prize. The Continental Tribe, every time, despite having the most expensive and strongest squad in the tournament, they failed to make an impact. So last season they made it, I think they went out in the quarterfinals. Before that, this season they went out in the group stage. In the group stage game itself, they went out. So
he's like the Pep of Qatar.
Yeah.
He has money to get big signings and all that, but he can't win the Continental Cup.
Yeah, it's something he has to prove, because if he's not able to win that, then it will be hard for him, because there also he's getting financial backing. They are a relatively strong team. They've recently won it also, like before, maybe 5-10 years back, or you can look it like that. And the weird fact is that they've lost to the same, every time they got knocked out, they lost to the same team. This time also in the group stage they got knocked out because of the same team. So he has something to prove there. I think he should only return after he managed, at least take them to the final. So that's something he has to prove. If he leaves now, then it would mean completely giving up on the project he's been doing there right now. So I think he's focused a bit on that also. And if he's proven there, it's not Barca, I think everyone will know that he can do it. Like, he can convince. Even if it didn't work out in Barca after that, the other clubs will be willing to sign him, because he has done something that's very good in maybe not the attractive part of football, maybe in Asian football, but still, it's still an achievement. So yeah.
Yes, sir. Anything else we want to talk about in our off script?
Not much else, I guess. I think this might be the last club football edition of our weekend recap. So I think we'll be focusing more on Copas and Euros coming next. I think both will be starting around June 11, 13, I think. So it is going to be one big month of football, a full night, everyday football. So it will be nice. I hope you can watch all the games, because the games are in weird times. Like, we're in India right now, and it will be like all the games will be night, starting from 11, 12 or something. It will go on till the morning 7. So it is literally the sleeping time here. So yeah, we'll try to watch most of the games, and we'll try to bring you more content. I think that.
Okay, thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. Please comment about anything that you wanted to comment throughout the talk that we had. If you want us to cover something, or if you have some opinion that you have, we can talk about it in our video, and we can dissect it for other people to know what you're saying. So please comment on our YouTube primarily, and please listen to whatever it is that